Protests over the death of George Floyd have taken over the country with hashtags like Black Lives Matter trending across Twitter and Instagram. Here to talk about ways to report these events as well as how to navigate the social media landscape during this time is the director of the journalism program at St. John's University, Mike Rizzo. And Mike, what advice would you give journalists who are covering these protests?
Well, I think we need to find the human story. We need to find the people who are involved. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? I mean, the basic questions that we want to know. We can see in many broadcast coverage or even newspaper reports the facts and kind of figures, but we need to find the human stories. And I think that's what I would focus on. Who are the people who are participating? And again, the ones that the reporters that have covered the people, we see the wide diversity of persons involved in these actions.
Absolutely. Now, a few journalists have been arrested during the protests, even after identifying themselves to police. But cops say a lot of people impersonate journalists. So what should correspondents be doing when it comes to dealing with the police on the ground?
Well, it's funny. I actually tell my students in my classes, make sure you are clearly identified as a journalist. You know, in the olden days, the typical reporter would wear that fedora with the press pass sticking out of the brim of the hat.
Right.
Well, you typically have press credentials. And in New York City, the New York City Police Department issues certified credentials for media people.
All right, let's get to social media. Protesters have taken to Twitter and Instagram to post about the demonstrations and share their videos and their pictures. Some of it, though, includes misinformation, which is retweeted or shared by others. How can journalists sort through that information and find the truth?
Well, the thing to do is to get to the source. Where is the information coming from? And we talk about this in journalism classes all the time. What can you trust because it is from an organization or a source that is legitimate, that is trustworthy? And that's where traditional news organizations still play an important role. They provide a system in which things are checked, in which things are verified before they are distributed. And that's what journalists need to do. You need to stop before maybe you send out a post or a tweet, and you make sure that you have all of your facts correct. Because the one time that you do it and you're wrong, then your trust, the trust in you will go down.
Right. And as we all know, President Trump loves to use Twitter, and now he's in a battle with social media after Twitter flagged some of his posts as potentially misleading or even glorifying violence. What do you think of the president's use of social media and his executive order that would no longer shield the websites from lawsuits?
Well, again, I look at this from a journalistic point of view. And Twitter is not a news organization. It's the 21st century village square. People go on and express all kinds of opinions about all different kinds of things. Now, if Twitter does want to espouse becoming a newspaper publisher, in effect, that may be a good thing, but they also need to adapt journalistic standards, journalistic ethics. And that means fairness. So if they are going to check one person or one political party and what they say, then they need to do that for all. And that means an investment in doing fact checking across the spectrum politically. I also invite my students to look at Catholic social teaching and how that can apply to journalistic ethics. The solidarity of all of us as human beings, the dignity of all persons. So that means have respect. Have respect for the people that you're checking, if Twitter is now going to check a lot of people, but also when you're posting, have respect for what you're saying. Make sure your words are respectful of the people who will be reading them and will be consuming the communication that you're sending out.
Now, there are some people in the Black Lives Matter movement who have been negative towards media coverage of the protests. They say too much of the narrative has been focused on the looting, that they aren't reporting on the police violence or in the streets or the peaceful protests. What do you think about that?
Well, again, people are absolutely right to look at the wide breadth of coverage, but there's so many sources of information out there. So they need to be specific, whether you are pro or against any of the coverage, what it is that you're talking about. You know, I think the media needs to, again, step back. Are we being fair and balanced in our reporting to make sure that we are presenting as full a picture as possible? And that will be the inspiration for people to say, yes, they are, and I'm going to follow that. They need to invest in those news organizations that they feel are doing it, and they will be the ones who will succeed and continue to grow audiences.
All right, Mike Rizzo, director of the journalism program at St. John's University. Thanks for the insight.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
If you're watching Currents News on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button and then click on the bell to get instant updates about all of our newest content, because we are putting your faith in the news.